All right, hello everybody. Welcome to a Receivables info webinar. Thank you for joining us today. Sorry for the technical glitches here kicking things off today, but I'm pretty sure Zoom hates me, so we're just going to go with that today. Um, just to kind of kick it off here with some introductions, let's start by kind of going around the horn here and having just a quick background for each person. Cris, do you want to start it off? Tell everyone a little bit about yourself and how you got to the seat that you're in today.
Yeah, sure. My name's Cris Bjelajac. Please do not worry about pronouncing my last name correctly. It's impossible. So don't want anyone, if you happen to meet me, don't worry about naming it. I've been running the Latitude line of business at Latitude by Genesys for 6 years now. Been with Genesys in total for 20 years ago. I joined a small outbound dialer corporation called Soundbite Communications, which some of you may be aware of. And that has been my start in the collections side of things on the software business.
And Lewis, I know that you've been a well-traveled man around the world. Could you tell everyone a little bit about yourself and how you got to the seat that you're in today?
Yeah, good morning, Adam. Yeah, my name is Siebrits. I'm originally from South Africa, but reside in Dallas, Texas now for the last 5 years. I'm co-founder of Resolv.Global, really a global BPO solution. And and we've got quite a lot of opportunities in terms of collections and customer service. And we enjoy talking to people and just telling them without a sales pitch, just answer questions.
Excellent. And Terry, could you tell everyone a little bit about yourself today?
Sure. I'm Terry McElrath. I'm president of FFR, First Financial Resources. My background primarily was in high-tech publishing. Then I went on to start my own small business consulting company, which led me to FFR. They brought me in to take a 30-year-old company and update technology and restructure and go national. So we've pretty much done all that in the last 3 years that I've been on board, and it's been an exciting time for us.
Awesome. Well, I think that there's a really interesting conversation for us to have today. And as we talk about the changing environment in the debt collection industry, I think that's probably a good place for us to start. I know everyone's, if you watch any of our webinars or podcasts, is probably talking about the account predictions for 2025 and for the end of this year, even in looking at what our expectations are in terms of the increase in volume. I think that's becoming overly apparent, right? We saw record highs in October of 2023, and we're starting to see, I believe it was just last month, where we saw an all-time record in charge-offs for credit card delinquency. And so that bubble is definitely pushing its way through the system. What are you guys starting to see as we evolve out of 2023 and we start to see more of these economic changes taking effect this year?
Well, I think, Adam, you're right. Currently the household debt is for the U.S. consumer debt's roughly $1.1 trillion. It's the third quarter in a row where it's above $1 trillion. And there's been about a 200 billion growth just in the last quarter. So I think it's going to increase. Delinquency is increasing in all the sectors. And that flow is definitely going through to the agencies, whether in via debt buyers, first direct placements, or with a third-party agency. So there's going to be an increased flow, and I think for a substantial period of time still, which we think is the opportunity for this whole industry.
I mean, coming along with those increases in volumes, we're also seeing a decrease in collectability, right? So, and then we've seen this through a number of different cycles, right? The 2008 cycle, we saw the same thing as well, whereas the volume of accounts increased, the liquidation capabilities of those accounts decrease. And so setting strategies for maximizing the value of the resources that you're putting at hand becomes infinitely more important. Let's talk a little bit about what are you seeing in terms of staffing limitations within the United States right now. Terry, it sounds like you've taken kind of, a national operation and taken it to a little bit more of a global scale. Talk to me a little bit about some of the challenges that you were facing in terms of staffing at the US level.
Yeah, so we're in the Boston area, and it's very, very difficult to hold on to collectors for a long period of time. So you have a high turnover, you're investing in the training, you're investing in the people, the payroll taxes, all those things. And they may move on to another opportunity, or they move on within the company or whatever. And it got to a point where we had to start looking outside to outsource. And it took me probably a year until we found the right partner, and we worked with Resolv.Global, and we worked, you know, in the beginning, we had to get to know each other and what expectations were on both sides. But
Sure.
I think it has been a tremendous partnership, and it's the right supplement for us to be able to have consistent coverage all the time, both here and outsourced.
So creating that kind of a hybrid model has enabled you to grow from a capacity standpoint, maintaining some flexibility by leveraging multiple locations. I do very much the same thing, even in the technology world, right? With staff on the globe, it makes it a lot easier for me to cover, you know, what I need to cover in terms of support on a 24/7 basis. Because otherwise, you're creating some really awkward environments for those people that are just working within the United States to create that round the clock kind of coverage.
Yeah, exactly. So it gives us a lot more options, and having our staff here still keeps our fingers in the business, you know, so we know what's happening, what's trending with recent business that's coming in. It just keeps us on top of our game to be able to still have collections here in-house as well.
Fair. Finding that balance, I'm sure, is incredibly important for keeping your finger on the pulse of what's happening with those consumers. Now, I'm going to probably ask this question later as well, but you know, from a strategic standpoint, have you looked at and have you kind of set yourself up where the internal collectors are working on certain things that you found have given you a better visibility as to the total operation, or how does that kind of how does that separation work for you between the work assigned for let's say global staff versus localized staff?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We're really just diving into that now. So we moved to a new collections platform, a new phone platform, all in the last year and a half. So anyone who's ever made that change understands the troubleshooting, so to speak, and the tweaking that constantly has to happen. It never ends, but we do feel like we're at a point now where the technology is working, we understand its capabilities. So now we're starting to look at data, because we have a year and a half of it now, and really building strategy to look at propensity to pay, utilizing scoring more, and setting criteria for jobs to run or queues to be pulled by balance or zip code or whatever it is, right? So I'll say we're looking into it. Maybe 6 months from now, I'll have a better answer for you of how we are going to divide it, but we are definitely looking at that right now and trying to figure out the best way to use the resources we have with the technology.
Well, so as we talk about the technology, was that part of your decision to move to a new platform or to move to a new application stack overall? The fact that you were moving into global operations, right? Because laying out that infrastructure has got to be somewhat of a lift, right? To be able to create those capabilities across a lot of organizations. Cris, I know you've got a lot of experience on that side of the world in terms of being able to deploy that stuff and create that. But with Terry, was that part of your decision process?
Well, I think it was always in the back of our mind, but really what was really driving it was the age of the existing system. The legacy system was 20 years old. And it presented almost like a DOS. It was just
Understood.
Very, very, very fundamental. So I think we knew we had to get cloud-based. And we couldn't switch our phone system till we had that platform in place. And so then it was extracting and pulling all that stuff. But I think it was always in the back of our mind, either A, we could have remote staff anywhere in the country or be going offshore.
Mhm. I feel like a lot of organizations kind of learned that lesson during COVID, right? It was so quick that we had to be able to deploy things on a global scale. And so we had to do a lot with a little bit of technology and do a lot of different things overnight.
Yes. And I started here October of 20. So right in the thick of it.
Fun. Yeah.
Yeah. So we
Right
were
when they really knew they needed change, right? They needed to implement that change yesterday.
Exactly.
I
Boy, did
completely
we
agree.
feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It created some interesting challenges, but I think it also generated some really interesting opportunities as well. Because as many challenges were created through that process, it forced our hand to make decisions a lot faster. And I think a lot of organizations made a lot of giant strides during that time period in terms of deploying new technology or being prepared to lay a larger infrastructure. I always look at technology like building houses, right? And if you're not going to lay a large enough foundation underneath all of these houses and
Yes.
build multiple houses right next to each other, well, the foundations are going to slide, cracks are going to show, and you're going to have problems. So I feel like COVID was that kind of one of those times where we had to relay a lot of that infrastructure to make sure that our houses could be built up on top of it. But it created a lot of interesting opportunities, especially as we talk about how that technology was implemented to create and enable some of these global operations. Now, when we talk about global, and I'm pretty sure we all have global operations, and all four of us on this call today are operating out of multiple countries, right? Like we've all got staff around the globe. And so not being focused in a single country, it feels like is kind of a wave of the future. And I feel like that was COVID might have been a catalyst to make those things happen. But talk to me a little bit about your diversification strategies in terms of being global, right? Rather than focusing on one country. Lewis, this might be a good one for you.
For a good one, perfect. Thanks, Adam. I think, I read a book a while ago about companies being able to grow exponentially.
Mhm.
And I think the ability to grow exponentially mean you have to find the resources that are best for best fit, probably, and not necessarily inside your organization always.
Mhm.
So, whether you need marketing, you need a collections agent, you need IT support, those resources are everywhere, and they and have become easily accessible through the help of technology. And we have that same approach. It could be that a call center could be a better fit for collections, a better fit for customer care, a better fit for technical support. And I think if you just drive the agenda of a single country or just a single approach of only nearshore, only offshore, only onshore, I think you're going to fall behind in the way that the world is developing. I think the nice teams talk about gig economy. And I think it's exactly that. You can go and find the resources wherever they are now and bring them into your business and actually allow you as a business owner to just focus on the growth of your business and grow it much quicker. Just to go back a bit earlier, Adam, we were talking about how the market's going to be flooded with paper and with accounts and on different stages of the revenue cycle. So in the US, if I'm an agency owner, I have to deal with 10-year of roughly 14 months on a collections agent and an attrition rate in collections of between 30 and 45%. So how do I build teams? How do I build human capital? How do I build consistency in performance if my focus is continuously just to find staff and try and keep my seats full? I'm not going to grow to the point where I'm actually going to benefit from the influx of new work. I'm just going to struggle to maintain. And I think that applies to software development, marketing, HR, every kind of function that you can outsource, and you find horses for courses. You find that company culture, that outsource partner culture that fits with your business. And there's a multitude of them. And I think that's the good position that you are in as a business owner, to go and find that exponential growth with partners that fits your own business culture.
I think it makes a lot of sense, especially as we talk about leveraging different management styles. One of the examples I love to use when we talk about operating on a global scale is operating even on a national scale, because I feel like those of us in the US can probably better understand it unless you spend time overseas. But years ago, long back home years ago, we did some experiments when I was at Credit Max where we were looking at collector accents and the locations of accounts, right? And
Yes,
do you place a whole bunch of New York accounts with a Texas agency, or maybe a New York agency where the volume, speed, attitudes might match up a little bit closer, right? And what is that ultimately going to look like? And how do you kind of ultimately leverage some different management strategies? Because even within my India offices, for example, our management strategy is slightly different between Bangalore and
yes.
Mumbai than it is between, how I manage something in Florida or, another state in which we might work. So,
Right.
it feels like there's some real opportunities there. Any experiences that you could share that kind of talk about how you're melding together these different management styles as you're looking at a global scale versus a national?
I think, I mean, if I may say, I think our experience with Terry was exactly that. We started off in one call center, which we thought would be a perfect fit. And there was just not a gelling of personalities. And luckily, with Terry's help, we were able to place it in a different call center, different team, different attitudes, and it worked really well. And I think that's the benefit of not having a single location. The fact that you've got the ability to find the right fit for your client, because in the end, those agents are your staff. Even
Mm.
though we find them and train them and put them in the seat and make sure they're there, they become an extension of your business. They carry your brand, and they are an extension of your brand. So you have to find that comfort. And I think sometimes it's more of a it could be offshore, it could be near shore, it could be in Colombia, or it could be in South Africa. It doesn't matter. There's that cultural fit somewhere, and it's not cultural just from an international perspective, but culture from a work ethic, and culture from your company's own ethics and values. And I think that's the benefit of having a global footprint.
I have I have an
Please.
anecdote that share about accented English. Back in the day at Soundbite, when we first started getting into doing collections messaging, so we would send automated voice messages. Hi, this is so and so calling from this agency. We'd like to speak to you. Press 1 if this is Cris Bjelajac. And what we did was we would have those automated voice messages recorded in lots of different English speaking dialects. And that would be, and male and female as well.
Yeah.
But UK English, South Africa English, and ANZ English always destroyed in effectiveness American English. And we would have far better people pressing 1, yes, this is me, because they wanted to talk to somebody. And I don't know what it is about the United States, but we love accented and native English speakers. So and when you guys started talking about that a few minutes ago, I thought of that as an example. So we can't do voice messaging like that anymore, but you can certainly work with some South African agents through Resolv.Global and have that sort of excellent customer experience, with somebody who's offshore.
Well, one of the things that we really haven't talked about here is kind of we talked about a technology perspective and going global, but I think we missed the opportunity here where kind of Latitude and Resolv.Global are working together as well, which is software expertise, right? And so that flexibility, because one of the longest periods of time that it takes in training up a new agent is getting them comfortable with the software and systems that are going to be in front of them. And so by developing that expertise in agents that are available in various locations, Latitude is kind of able to enable their clients to scale up, right? And to be able to quickly add on as volumes are increasing. Let's talk a little bit about what that ultimately, like the successes that kind of come from that type of relationship.
Well,
I think
that's what I got very excited about when meeting Lewis for the first time and talking about it. our customers are not adding seats of Latitude by Genesys, which is, that's my goal. I want to sell as much Latitude by Genesys as possible. I'm a software guy. But our customers are adding seats, but they're not adding seats to the amount that the volume in collections that we're seeing. And anecdotally, I say, okay, we get to renewal time and they're like, hey, everything's going great, software's going great. I'm adding a few people here, but I can't find people. I can't staff up to the level I want. Mm-hmm. They're afraid to take the commitment. They're afraid to make the long-term investment. Certainly salaries and per hour is higher than it was a few years ago. So that's why I thought this was such a valuable resource to expose our existing customers and prospects, but anybody who's running an agency should at least be looking at this type of solution.
And I think, if I might add, Adam, I think that's why we're really so privileged to have this relationship with Cris and Latitude, is the fact that it allows us to build a bench, trained agents to understand the software. We have the trainers in-house, and it allows the agencies to go to market just so much quicker. We take away a lot of the training time with the agents. The fact that we have access to partners like Cris that allow us to actually train up agents in different software platforms even before they are exposed to the client who just needs to enforce their own culture onto the agents.
Well, I think the other thing that I see in this, in operating on a global scale, is really the offering of these careers versus jobs. And Terry, I'm sure you're going to understand where I'm going with this, right? Is that when we start operating outside of the United States, right, it has been very hard to hire in the United States. It's even harder to hire good people. And it's even harder to hire good people in metropolitan areas or even near a metropolitan area at this point, right? It becomes exponentially more difficult. But when I hire somebody in Mumbai, for example, I know that that person is generally going to be with me for multiple years because the work ethic is a little bit different and their visibility of an opportunity in front of them is not as a job, as a career. And it's been my experience, and I'm curious to hear your experience, is that when I'm operating globally, each one of the people that I hire views the opportunity in front of them as a career and they treat it as such. Whereas if I hire that same position in certain parts of the United States, the chances of them looking at that as a stepping stool versus an opportunity is significantly increased. What's been your experiences when it comes to that type of visibility or that view of your staff?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with what you're saying. I mean, we've only been doing this for it's less than a year. So I do feel that they look at it differently. Like you said, I think here in the US, typically a collector position is a stepping stone. It's not a destination for them, which is why the turnover is high, which is why it's hard to hire. I think the other thing that we have found that has made a huge difference is really making them a part of our team. They come to all of our weekly meetings. They come to our state of the company meeting. We really have gotten to know them and same them with us to the point where they kind of kid back and forth with each other now. And I think that has been the best part of all of this, is getting to know this entire team, this entirely different culture. And they're so happy to have these opportunities. And it just feels really good as an employer to give that to them.
And Adam, if I can just add some stats on that, if you talk about, and India well, but specifically what I know about South Africa and Kenya is that the unemployment rate, or what we term youth unemployment rate, is roughly, well, it's close to 60%. So anybody between the age of 18 and 32, 60% of them doesn't have a job. And once they have a job, that job feeds roughly a family of 8 people. So that's why people look after their jobs. But on the same hand, we as employers cannot pay minimum wages. We cannot We don't run sweatshops. We make sure people are in grade A offices. We make sure they get picked up at the office. So you look after your staff because they're the asset. We don't see them as we really see, and that's why I love this business so much, because you do make a difference in people's lives. It's not just filling seats. It's literally I see that I
Changing
daily
lives.
see the differences we make with people, and that's the part that I really love.
Louis, I think you bring up a really good point that I want to make sure that we address in this discussion, and that's that this is not just about cost savings going global. Going global is a very different approach. And when I first started opening offices overseas, I started getting those oh, you're just taking advantage people. Am I really? Or am I providing real employment opportunities for long-term employment and growth? Now, I've also got a handful of individuals that have started to lead their departments, right, that are overseas now and now part of our general leadership team. There's not like a team in this country and a team in this country. We are one team that operates as one team, right? We've got leaders that are everywhere based on the departments and specializations and those kinds of things. But that took some time for us to develop. And by giving them by giving all of the staff opportunities to grow internally and to always look to hire and promote from within before I look from without. Is there somebody on my team today that can lead this job function? If there isn't, then I may need to add somebody else from the outside. But if there is, how can I grow that person? My favorite question to ask all of them, and I do one-on-ones with every single person in my company at least once a month, and I ask the same question: what's bringing you joy in your job right now? Where are you finding joy? And we find different ways to tweak and modify some of the things that we do based on the feedback that we get during those discussions. But for me, it's been a really great experience kind of learning those cultures, Terry, like you were talking about, incorporating those people across the organization. And now everybody's kind of training their own, right? So
Yeah.
I had meetings, at the end of the year last year where basically we said, all right, look, either we're going to have to add people in your department. Either we're going to hire your boss or we're going to hire your subordinate. But it's up to you what we're going to do, right? It's based on your performance and how you interact and what work you do over the next 90 days. And we've hired a lot of subordinates because we
That's
provided
great.
those opportunities for them to
Yeah.
grow and gave them measurable goals to hit.
Yes. Yeah, everyone here. So we run on EOS, which is a business operations system.
Mhm.
Everyone has a scorecard. Everyone has numbers,
Mhm.
and everybody's got to hit their numbers. So we review them every week. It goes up on the board. Everybody knows what everybody's doing, and and they get incentivized by those numbers as well.
I think on a global scale, we're going to see more gamification of this style of number management, right? And I think as we start to see more of that gamification over time, there's going to be some very interesting ways in which we're able to motivate people on a global scale, because it is a little bit different. Not everybody is driven by the same incentives, because it's not always just a financial incentive.
Right. No, it can be an afternoon off. It can be the gift card. Not necessarily at their favorite restaurant or something, or a spa. So
I find like my US staff is not driven by awards, let's say, right? But then but our India staff is, right? Or our other staff may feel differently about it, right? So I feel like, even job titles have different motivating effects in different areas of the globe.
I agree. Definitely agree with that.
So now that we've talked about the benefits of going global, I'm sorry, let me kind of keep the conversation flowing here and talk about some more of the challenges that we're seeing in the United States, because I think this is a really important factor for us to continue to consider is what are some of those factors that are driving us in the United States to look at more of a global marketplace, and what are some of the challenges we're facing? So, we've talked about kind of post-COVID having slower growth to new seats, but how about just not being able to find the people? Right? Even with unemployment rates somewhat on the rise post-COVID, where do we stand now? And what are you guys seeing in terms of the ability to hire new people? Even if you want.
Believe it or not, we still have people just not show up for an interview.
It's mind-blowing.
It's unbelievable to me. And during COVID, it was unbelievable, but that they would go through the whole process of the phone interview set a date and time, accept a calendar invitation to only not even come to the office. So that's one challenge. I think that, again, we're in Boston, and to your point before, it's exponentially harder to hire in a metropolitan area, especially one like Boston.
Oh yeah.
You know, and it's very expensive to be competitive and to get these people in the door. You have to pay, and so you only have so much money.
Yeah.
Right. And if you want to hit a profit margin, you have to start thinking about how else can we do this?
Mhm. You have to find the margins. As a reformed Bostonian, I completely understand.
Yeah.
You know, where I understand the challenges, and it's not just Boston, right? It's Boston, New York, Philadelphia. I mean, really,
Oh, yeah.
there's
It's
there's
crazy.
any
It's
metropolitan,
really, really, as they say, wicked expensive here.
as they say, it is wicked expensive to have a drink in the bar by the pier. It does slide out occasionally. And look, I find that those challenges are something that we've never seen before. It's unprecedented, and we've got squeezing margins and the inability to add new staff. So what do? You have to break out of your existing hiring locations, and short of just going remote. And I think just going remote in this industry is difficult, right? It's to just to have everybody working from home requires
Yeah.
whole other levels of management. So by leveraging the BPO services on a global scale, having those established facilities, the security protocols in place, it's got to be a little bit easier for you to talk to your board of directors about what kind of changes you're trying to make here, and to keep even your clients in sync with the changes that you're making. Talk to me a little bit about that difference between that kind of remote environment versus what you're seeing with the BPO services.
Yeah, that's a great question. I can tell you that this was not an easy decision for our leadership team
Oh, sure.
to outsource. Again, 30-year-old company, family owned, took pride in, you know, everyone who works here is from Massachusetts, blah, blah, blah. And once we decided to just investigate it, then it was trying to go out and find the right fit. And then it was letting our clients know. So this is no small, quick decision. At least it wasn't for FFR, because it changes fundamentally what you believe your core values have been, and now you're opening up it. But because, like you said, you have to think about this stuff. If the margins are shrinking and it is more expensive, and how do we stay in business and make this work? So all I can say is for our company, this was a very long, arduous process to get where we are today. All worth it. It's all working. We couldn't be more happy. But you have to take it step by step.
Mm-hmm.
Adam, if I can just
investigation.
maybe add on to what
Sure.
Terry is saying, you know, for me it's so important. One of the key words, what is the company values, and I understand exactly when we started talking to her. Once you're used to this way of, this is my company, this is my baby, all the staff have been here for 20 years, and it's like a family. But
Yeah.
I do think you can create the same, whether it's remote or offshore. And maybe that leads into a bit of our next part, but I think technology allows that, whether it's, and we talked about the gamification of training, the gamification of setting targets, of creating teams, all of that. And I think that's where you find that fine balance between the traditional model, offshoring, AI, technology, and companies that can get that mixture. And even as a BPO, it's not just about selling seats, it's about literally becoming one of the parts of that whole new way of doing business, becoming a small part in that whole cog of tech and people and traditional values. You can do it. You can put it together. But as Terry is saying, it's not just dumping people in seats and thinking, now I've got a solution.
Yeah.
That's the worst way it can go.
I agree.
I think the other thing that factored in for us during COVID, you know, from going remote versus global offshoring, you still have to manage the remote employees, right? So, I mean, I've talked to so many collection agencies and I've asked them, so what do you do? Oh, we have a camera on everybody. Or, you know, we monitor when they log in and we have somebody checking all the time. And I just was like, gosh, that just seems like so much work to me.
Very Big Brother.
Yeah, very Big
There's a lot
Brother.
of
And
AI technology to
yeah,
watch
that's
them,
just
and
not our style. I don't like working that way. I want them to feel, again, we want anyone who works here to feel like they're part of a team and a family. And I just didn't feel that displayed that to them. So I think this what really was that we talked it out, we thought about it. We're like, yes, you can find people who are willing to work for less in Iowa or wherever, but they're in Iowa. We won't even know them really, you know, and yet we still have to manage it. So I think this was great for us because they have their own manager, like Lewis said, they're in their own office space together. They have
together.
their
That's the
team.
key.
They're not isolated, and that I love that.
Look, my U.S. operations are remote, right? So within the United States, I've got a lot of remote staff, and that's not collection staff. That's, you know, marketing, news, media, etc. And so like we've got those people kind of spread around the United States, but having the rest of my teams together is everything. It's that collaborative environment. It's about that face-to-face training, being able to touch the person next to them that they're working on a project with and have those
Have lunch
interactions.
together, right?
Have lunch together. And I also make it a point to physically be in their presence. I generally shoot for at least once a year. So like I literally just got back from Brazil on Monday. I'm headed to India in June to go sit down with the team and spend that face time with them. Some that have met me before, others that haven't. But it's important because I've found through my experience that that face-to-face interaction with me changes their entire dynamic of our organization. It changes their view of us as an organization. It changes their view of me. I'm not just a talking head in a box on their screen anymore. I am an actual human that they get to interact with. Now, I know we've got another slide before this one, but I'm going to skip ahead here for a minute and talk about the technology is built to empower, not to replace the humans, right? So like we talk about artificial intelligence and all these things. And if you look at the Datos report from TransUnion, it's only about 11% of organizations that are actually utilizing artificial intelligence to this point within the collections and receivables management industry, right? A lot of people want to be using it, but it's not a solution to replace the call center agents. Your technology should be empowering those agents. And Lewis, I know this is something you and I had like this very passionate discussion about this at the RMAI conference back in February. Talk to me a little bit about how you see that difference.
Well, for me, I think, you know, it's exactly, it has to be a symbiotic relationship. It's not an either or relationship. Do I go AI? Do I stick to humans? I think I told you one of the things, or my favorite way to describe it is to say that to do collections, you need to have a willing buyer. You have to buy what you want to sell. And what are you selling? You're trying to sell to him to make a payment that he either cannot necessarily afford or don't want to make for some reason. And I think AI plays a role in terms of low-hanging fruit. It plays a role in activation of accounts. It plays a role in identifying the cream of the crop. But then it goes back to the point where if you just rely on AI, I think you're missing out on a lot of profitability. And I think you're missing out on the ability to service your client to the fullest extent. Or if you're a debt buyer, you're probably missing out on a lot of additional revenue and yield on your portfolios. And I think, and again, I want to stress really not necessarily just finding cheap resources, but finding willing resources, or like we like to say, talent is everywhere, opportunity is not. To find that talent and use it within your organization to with enhanced AI. And I mean, we use AI, but we use it for training, we use it for QA, we use it for real-time assessment of calls. Where do we miss the mini Miranda? Where did we miss the closing opportunity? So it's the continuous training, because there's training, retraining to get to perfection. And that's where I like the AI. But I think it's it's a, and I don't want to offend people, but it's a bit of a buzzword that people think is the be all and end all. And I see it as one of the cocks in the wheel. It's not the cock in the wheel.
It's an empowerment, right? And so
Exactly.
to Chris's world too, right? So if we think about it from Chris's perspective, right, having your account management system that sits behind everything is one piece of technology,
Yeah.
right? And that's all about accuracy, transparency, right? And job function. And then you can overlay artificial intelligence on top of that type of technology to enhance the data that you've collected, just like you can
Yes.
overlay artificial intelligence on top of the call center employees, right, to improve their capabilities, to improve their training, to improve quality assurance, and those kinds of things. And I think that there is a place for artificial intelligence within the receivables management industry, but the difficult conversations aren't being had by a computer, right? The difficult conversations where you need to employ empathy, when you need to understand the person
Exactly.
on the other
Yes.
side of the phone, right?
Yeah.
Those are the places where the human is still a very much needed resource and asset. And if you've got a human asset that already understands the technology platform, is capable of doing those types of conversations and learning, additionally being trained on that and to identify and find, let's call it the diamonds in the rough, so to speak, right? That's where real opportunity, I think, starts to come from the leveraging of this artificial intelligence tied back to those real people and improving those real people, but also having that underlying understanding of the data management, data maintenance. To me, that's kind
Yes.
of the crux of where I think this is going to start to flow over the next 2 to 3 years.
And Adam, I was at a conference last week where with a user group of the software we use for our AI, and they had a really big bank there, and they used the AI just for empathy training. And I think, so there's so many more applications. It's not a quick solution, but literally it can change lives if you actually know what you want to achieve with it. And it's yeah.
I like it. Now, one of I'm going to go back a step here for the slide that I skipped here, but we were talking about additional account penetration, because as we talk about the increase in account volumes, the decrease in liquidation, we're going to have to find new opportunities to penetrate accounts. Now, Terry, I'm sure this was part of kind of your evaluation process for your team as you guys looked at moving forward, because you said my margins are getting thinner. What am I going to do to be able to touch more accounts? What have you started to see? I know you're only in that first year, and I mean, look, even the first couple of months of this type of an operation, I'm sure that you're starting to feel the effects already. But what kind of things are you starting to see in terms of your ability to touch previously untouched accounts?
Yeah, so just having our predictive dialer up and running now has increased our inbound calls from a year ago. They've tripled.
Wow.
Yeah. So we have created a contact center. It's not just waiting for the phone to ring. People are on the phone all day. And that wasn't the case. We were waiting for the phone to ring, and they're making outbound calls. So we don't have anyone making outbound calls unless they're manual and they need to get back to somebody. So that's a huge change. We're seeing more consistency in our average daily revenue, where it's not going up and down so much. It's pretty steady, which makes me incredibly happy.
Predictability is nice.
Yes. And it helps with forecasting and all those things that are so important. I think also I've seen more energy on our floor. It's we're running more contests. We have the ability to listen to more calls, and we're looking for new opportunities for training as we go through all of this, because we really, even though our calls were recorded, they weren't as accessible to us. We could go right in, listen to a call, bring somebody in and say, let's listen to this together. This was the perfect call for a settlement, right? So everybody listen to this. That kind of access to the information it's a game changer, and it's all right at your fingertips.
I love that you talk about finding the right things. And so often we talk about quality assurance. We talk about finding when we miss the mini Miranda or something along those lines. But it sounds like you're also doing that from the positive side, right? To
Exactly.
identify those great opportunities for additional training based on live results.
Yes.
I love
And
hearing that.
no, I think, Adam, what I like is, in our world, we use AI from the recruitment process. I mean, different to the US, where you struggle to find people to employ. If we would advertise for one position, there'll be 5,000 resumes being dumped for people applying for jobs. And a resume only says so much. So we use a lot of AI to conduct the interviews with the staff, listen to the voice, how neutral is the accent, is it a trainable voice type of thing.
Yeah,
And
sure.
then that flows through to the QA part. So you start finding out exactly the best candidates, and you can very quickly get them to the perfect talk-offs, the perfect settlement call. As Terry was saying, you build a library with AI of the best of the best calls. And that helps with the training as well, and getting training up and running. So that's where I see a massive opportunity with AI, empowering agents to be better agents. And obviously that's going to lead to better yields, ability to grow your business, service more clients, more products. It's a game changer for me.
You're trying to solve the opposite problem, right? So in the United States, we're trying to figure out how to get more, opportunity, more people, career opportunities into the funnel. And you're trying to figure out how to better filter all of the career opportunities that are flowing in, right?
Exactly.
So, using the technology to solve literally the opposite problem.
It's exactly that. And it's an exciting problem to solve.
Yeah. It is. Look,
Yes, it is.
And it's interesting to see the hiring practices and the expectations as you look around the globe and in different countries, and what those expectations are, has always just been interesting for me. Now, as we kind of roll into our last 5 minutes or so here, one of the things that we talked about was how to select a BPO partner, and what does that ultimately look like, and finding the right people to work for you. And I'll state the obvious here, but people always work with the people they like. I know it's been my experience. That's generally who I hire when I need something, right? Is somebody that I enjoy working with. And so when you're operating on a global scale, that's got to create some new challenges, because you really need to make sure that you've got a point of contact that you're really comfortable with, that you really find synergy with. So what's that process looked like for you guys in terms of finding the right BPO partner?
I think, at least for me, it really does come down to the treatment of the employee. So it was really important for us that we found a partner that wasn't taking advantage of anyone financially, that they were working in nice environments, and that they were able to, not have trouble getting paid on a regular basis, all of those things. You'd be surprised, there were a few that I talked to that I really did not feel good about. And I met Lewis and Jason at ACA last summer. And we sat and talked for an hour and a half that day. We and they allowed me to ask every question I possibly had, and they had all the right answers. And it was the way they talked about their people that made the imprint on me, and why I came back and said, I think we should talk more with these people. So I think it goes back to, if you're treating people with respect, you have a respect for your business, which means you probably have a secure data, and there are people you want to work. All those things come together in how someone presents their business. And it wasn't about, they weren't trying to get me to just sign up right now. It was, think about it. This is what we have. We're here if you have any questions. And for me, that was when I knew, and then I had to come back and convince everybody else. That was the hard part.
It always is the hard part, right? Having that conversation with your board. But Lewis, it sounds like you and Cris fall very much on the same line of solutions-based selling. And we've even done a whole webinar specifically talking about, it's not about selling, right?
Yeah.
It's about building a solution that works for a customer.
Exactly.
And then either it works for them or it doesn't. But it takes an internal champion, right? It
Yeah.
takes somebody like you, Terry, that actually can work with their team internally, someone that can be empowered and provide them with the information that they need so that they can go have intelligent conversations and answer the same questions that they ultimately had themselves during the first conversation.
Yes, yes. Yep.
I
like
mean,
to call
Adam,
that
one of the
the
things,
sales game of telephone.
yeah, for us recently, you know, as BPOs, or you know, the sort of the everybody wants to say, what are the labels I can show as a BPO? This is my client. This is my client, and we worked really hard on an account with a large IT company, a well-known brand. And in the end, the demands they had on terms of putting pressure on the what we're allowed to pay our staff in terms of, you know, they were literally looking for a sweatshop, despite the fact that they're $1 billion company. And that felt so good to walk away from the deal because, you know, although we see ourselves as BPO providers, personally, I see myself as the employment creator. It makes me happy. And to create sustainable jobs, even if we do business a bit slower, but we know we're creating sustainability, then I'm happy.
Yeah.
Then I'll do this the whole day. And I think finding a partner, whether you on what side of the fence you are, you should feel comfortable to walk away, and you should feel comfortable to actually trust the people that they've got the same values, because in the end, they're an extension of your business. It's all about values.
I agree with that statement. Chris, any final thoughts as we wrap up our discussion today?
Yeah, it frustrates me to see that there are people who've been managing portfolios at agencies for years and years and years, and right now they're looking at stuff that they typically could liquidate that they're just not able to right now. And that has to be super frustrating for them right now. So at the very least, everyone should explore something like Resolv.Global and take a look, because I know you're just leaving money on the table in the collections industry. That is not a good thing.
Now with the increased volume that we have coming down the pipeline, and I look forward to learning more about, you know, really what's kind of getting my industry update at CRS next week in Las Vegas at the Four Seasons. Shout out to Mark Naiman and his crew for putting that on next week. But I want to thank everybody for coming on and having this discussion with me today. I think talking about kind of the global world is really the wave of the future here, especially as we look at the increase to account volumes. But each of your expertise was greatly appreciated today.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you,
Nice
Terry.
to talk
Thank you,
with
Chris.
you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For those of you watching, thank you so much for joining us today. We'll be posting the replay on Friday on YouTube so that you can share it with your friends and others that you know are in need of similar information. But until next time, everybody, thank you so much, and we'll see you all again soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.